Hi, everyone. Hi, Mary. Thank you
Hello.
for joining me today. I'm really honored to speak with you. We speak a lot to different people regarding how important education is and access to education for refugee girls and some of the issues that they might come across getting that education. Your work from your TED Talk, your experience at the Kakuma refugee camp, and I'm really excited that we're going to be enlightening and inspiring some of our girls today. So thank you so much for being a part of this Girl Up conversation with me today.
I'm so excited about it. Yes, and I hope everyone can learn from it too.
Yeah, so can you start everyone off by telling everyone how you came to learn how important education is?
How I came to learn education that is important, it was the first time that my father started investing in me and putting me to school. I was able to go to a boarding school, and in this school, I was taught to be independent, to be an independent thinker that is critical, that questions everything around me rather than just take in what the society has provided for me. Through education, I've been able to find my own voice, to disrupt systems that have undermined me as a woman and my fellow women. And so through education and how I got to even get inspired for education was my journey to school and having a male figure in my life investing in me and pushing me forward despite the community not being able to do that to their girls. And so I have felt like this is my life journey to be able to give investment to my fellow women and fellow girls because the society is not willing to do so.
Right, and then you ended up as a teacher in Kakuma camp, but you are also a former refugee. So can you enlighten our audience about your story a little bit more and how you came to the Kakuma camp?
So how I first came to the Kakuma camp was I was 4 years old, fleeing from South Sudan, and I found a refuge in Kakuma, like most other refugees have found refuge in the camp. And later on, my father was able to come to the camp and took me to a school in Nakuru, which is a different part of the camp, not a different part of the camp, but rather a different section of the country, that is Kenya. And I was able to go to boarding school and see the disparities between the school that I went to and the school that I initially was in Kakuma refugee camp. Later on, I was able to perform well, but in the middle, I lost both my parents, and refugee camp was the only place that I could return to. As a refugee, it's really hard to get opportunities. And so after finishing high school, it was almost impossible. Okay, so sorry for that. As a refugee, it's almost impossible to get an opportunity to go to high school, not to high school, to go to grad school or go to university or college. It's almost an impossible deal. So what happened was after I finished my high school for the second time in 2016, I went back to the camp to give back because that was the only thing I could do. As I tried to seek opportunities, the only thing that gave me joy was to become a teacher. And I saw students hungry for opportunities, students that have overcome so much obstacle and still go to school on a day-to-day basis. Young mothers that are still having their kids back home, but they still choose to come to school every day. Students that are in a child-headed family, but they come to school despite that obstacle. Students that don't have anyone literally in their life, but they totally depend on this new system, the education system. And every time they come to school, they are hungry for something new, to find peace, because they are children of war. And every time they come to this space, they find a new joy in themselves. They're able to interact with students from different countries. And in the middle of doing this, they're getting healed. They're turning their wounds into scars. And that makes it beautiful. And that inspired me to become a teacher, to give what I can, despite the little resources that I had. I only taught a few subjects that I was good at because I couldn't teach math. So
it'd be so inspiring because, like you said, it's a very, 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 very small percentage, and maybe you know the exact percentage of refugees that are able to get resettled and go to a university. Do you know the exact number? I'm not sure. It's very, very small.
So only 1% of refugees are able to make it to universities.
And just so everyone has some sort of idea, at the Kakuma camp, we're talking about, just in Kakuma, there's what, about 200,000 refugees?
200,000 refugees.
Right, so 1% of those will have the opportunity. So education for a refugee doesn't just mean knowledge, it means freedom too. It represents freedom. It represents finding a way to either use that tool in that new country or to be able to go back to the country that they've had to flee from and help rebuild it, because a lot of these countries are in need of new leaders, new leadership, new education, new systems to help rebuild their lives. So do you have one student that you remember or anything about teaching them, or any young girl that you, and it could just be an experience that you had as a student that made you feel like, wow, I'm doing the right thing?
I can talk about them as a whole because they all shared something similar, fleeing from war or coming from backgrounds that they have been discriminated. And so every time I went to school, I just saw that hunger in their eyes. And they saw me as a role model. I was just a mere teacher and we were literally the same age, but they were open. They would call me aside and create jokes. And despite the communities or the backgrounds they're coming from, they all allowed themselves to be vulnerable and to listen to each other and to see a way forward. They did not see a dead end with me. By seeing me giving back to them, they felt like they could also come out of the camp. And so I can talk about them as a whole, the fact that they were resilient despite the obstacles that they're facing, despite being young mothers, despite being girls that are being pressured to get married, to be able to come out of poverty. They all stood together because they believe in a common goal, being together as refugees and finding a solution or opportunities to take them out.
And it takes a lot of courage for a lot of refugee girls to get an education. Sometimes they're going against what maybe their family culturally has been doing or what they have been teaching for generations. You know, I met one girl who all she's wanted to do was to get an education to be a doctor, and she's 16, and Bilal, she's absolutely amazing. But in her culture and in the school, it was such a small percentage of women in these schools, and I'm where's all the rest of them? Well, it's like they're being told to stay home. They're being told they're not allowed to get an education because of oppressive systems. So it really takes a lot of courage and a lot of support. And that's something that you have been doing during this COVID-19 pandemic. You acted immediately. You didn't wait for anyone. And I'd love for you to share what you did and how people can get involved, not just with what you're doing at the camps, but with the UN Refugee Agency. And we can talk more about that after you tell them what you've been doing.
Okay, so I'll go pretty fast on it. So what I've been doing was, the first thing was to provide PPE and food substances for the refugees, because when the distribution was happening, UNHCR doesn't have enough funding for now. And so we had to step up and try to provide food for our fellow refugees. And I saw refugees coming up with, by creating masks, soap, and that was the first thing that we started. The second thing that I started was I'm running right now Wi-Fi hubs in the camp that will be able to help 12th graders and 8th graders to continue with their schooling despite COVID-19, which is something that they totally need. There's so many ways that people can chip in. First of all, by donating to UNHCR. That is the first thing that you can do.
The link is in my bio. If anyone is looking for it or needs help, it's in my bio on Instagram. You can it's super easy to find.
Totally. The second thing that you can do is educate yourself on issues around refugees and try to fundraise, talk to your friends, bring this conversation on, and you can help refugees that have been resettled in your country by either teaching them or doing something like giving books to refugee camps. There's so much that you can do. The third thing you can do is stand up against government policies that are limiting refugees resettlement or closing doors for refugees. You can do this by letter writing campaigns, either to your representative or government officials. The other thing you can do is get involved in refugee initiatives. Like, for example, whatever I'm doing, you can go to my link on Instagram and you'll find where you can go to the GoFundMe to help raise funds for the Wi-Fi hubs. You can, as educators or schools, you can provide scholarships to refugees or entrepreneurial opportunities for young even older refugees to be able to support themselves and become independent. You can write plays or something to do with refugees. For example, the new show on Netflix, Stateless. You all have to check it out. That you can support refugees, and that's all that counts. Just the little that you can do.
It's so true, because we're talking about 1% of people that get the opportunity, and that's on top of how difficult it is. We were talking earlier about how hard it is to even get to some of the schools, even on the camps. Some of these kids are walking for miles just to get to the school, and now because of the virus, the schools are closed down, so they're relying on Wi-Fi, on having a virtual education. And a lot of these homes, most of these homes do not have that. We're talking about not even access to clean water, enough water, let alone Wi-Fi. So to be able to provide them with that is huge. It's really huge. And you know, what I've learned from all the camps that I've gone to is refugees don't want a hand out, just a hand up. You know, every refugee that I've met has never asked me for just not one thing, not one thing. I've never been asked for one thing. It's always, can I get you a coffee? Can I show you where I live? And can I show you, you know, my family? And it's a lot of pride. You know, when you are taken away, you have to leave your home. You know, if I have to leave my home right now, say something happened, I have to leave my home at this very moment, that doesn't mean I'm different. I'm still capable, just like I was capable when I was sitting on my couch at home, when I had my family, when I had everything. And we just want to make sure that everyone has the tools that they can have, that they deserve to have, to lead a dignified life, to have an education, to be able to rebuild their lives, rebuild their communities. That's all we're asking for here. Which I think that we can all do. I think that if we come together, even if it's $1, I really feel that we can make a difference. So I'm excited for other girls, especially to support other girls, to have a real education, a real fighting chance.
Totally.
So we came together. I don't know how much time we have, so I'm going to just keep talking until you're like, we're done. But we came together because Dana Hughes over in Kenya knows you and had worked with you, and you did your TEDx talk. For anyone that hasn't seen her talk for TEDx, it's absolutely amazing. And she really goes into her story, and it's truly incredible. And I was like, I was completely enamored by your story and inspired by you, and you were my date to L'Oreal's Woman of Worth. And we really had a great time, and you were able to meet Viola Davis there. And that was really cool because you're an actress too. And you're doing a camp, or we're trying to do this camp at Kakuma. So hopefully when all of this is over, we'll be able to go back. So what is something that you really feel that people don't get to know about what happens at a refugee camp in terms of, you know, how creative everyone is? Like, what's something that you can share about that?
Just the fact that people feel like being a refugee is just the only identity that we have. But just to conclude, like, as refugees, we have so much. We are hungry for opportunities. We need people to invest in us by just little things that you do. They give us opportunities. Please give us opportunities, if I may say. And that's all we are asking for. We've undergone crazy lifestyles, but we need you to just come in and give us opportunities to stretch out ourselves and become the best version of ourselves. Thank you so much.
I love that. I just have a couple more minutes. No, I don't. Melissa's saying I have more. I have more time. No, I have no more time. Okay, I have no more time. I was so excited because, you know, I've said this, Mary and I can talk. But anyways, I'm so grateful to you, everyone at Girl Up, for having us. And thank you to the UNHCR and Dana and Chris and Lily and everyone there for making this happen for us. And Mary, thank you for your time and for bestowing so much inspiration on us and all of your work.
Thank you so much for joining us.